Hello and welcome. You are listening to the third episode of the Trajectory podcast brought to you by AFEC. Today I'm talking with Peter Jamieson from the Commonwealth Superannuation Corporation. Lovely to have you here in your offices.
Nice to be here. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. So perhaps you could begin by telling us what exactly CSC does. What sort of things go on here?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. So CSC, Commonwealth Superannuation Corporation, formed a couple of years ago. It is basically the Commonwealth superannuation schemes for Commonwealth public service and the military. So our customers are public servants and members of the Australian Defence Forces, Air, Navy and Army. And we're basically in the business of helping people prepare for their retirement. So I think one of the most important jobs there is enabling everybody to retire with enough money to support whatever it is they want to do post-work. And that is so varied, different for every single person, when, how, what. And so our job is to help get people prepared for that and then to support them in retirement.
Very interesting. There you go.
Best job in the world.
Yeah.
Most important job, I reckon.
Yeah,
helping everybody
absolutely
prepare for what happens after work.
Do you find you come across many, I mean, we're jumping a bit ahead here, but do you find you come across many clients who are in a position where they prepared too late or haven't been in the position they should be moving into that?
It's an unfortunate reality that I think, and there's probably a number of things happening that are pointing to this reality, that most Australians, I think, are probably underprepared for retirement in all its forms. And as a society, we've been used to relying upon government to support us in retirement. That has changed over my generation. So when I started work, I didn't have any choice. I had to start contributing to superannuation. And then as this generation's gone on, employers have had to contribute more and more to support the savings for individuals in retirement. But the unfortunate reality is a lot of people start late in preparing and saving. A lot of people under-contribute over their life. Unfortunately, we've got half of the population, females, that take time out of jobs and are really under-prepared for retirement through no fault of their own, just the fact that biologically they're the ones that have to carry children, and so that means that they're underrepresented or underprepared for retirement. So when I say it's an important thing, I do feel it's one of the most important things that we have to do for the country, and there's a lot of work underway to see if we can't make that a better system that helps people prepare better.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get into that later on in the podcast. I'd love to hear more about that. But perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your role specifically here at CSC and the day-to-day operations that you undertake.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So, Chief Customer Officer, it's a bit highfalutin, but basically it means I have responsibility for all of the customer-facing functions within Commonwealth Superannuation. What does that mean? It means the contact centres that talk to customers when they call us or respond to them, to customers when they have email inquiries for us. The actual management of the superannuation contributions that come from employers and individuals, making sure they're accounted for correctly, making sure they're put into an account and then they're available under retirement. And probably what we're most known for, which is looking after the money, making sure that it's growing at a good rate, making sure that it's not being diminished in any way. So there's a double-edged sword there of making sure we're generating sufficient return, so it's growing at a healthy rate. But then as markets go up and down, making sure we're not diminishing the capital, the savings that we're entrusted with for our customers. So that whole management of the finance part is so important. That's not part of mine, but that's an important part of what we do. And I also have all the fun stuff, products, marketing, communications, our website, all that sort of stuff where customers engage with us as part of my team.
Brilliant. And did you think this is where you would end up before university? Like, that might be, a fair way back, perhaps, or like
it was a long way back.
A long way back.
Let's be clear about that. It was a long time ago, but no idea. In fact, I've had 3 careers that. In fact, I probably had 20 careers, but with 3 large organisations, and I never would have tipped that that's where I would go. My career evolved. I took opportunities. I found opportunities were presented to me, and I took them. And this last one is one of those. I was working overseas when I found out about this job. I liked the sound of Chief Customer Officer. That sounds like something that sort of holds true for me. I've always been very passionate about customers. I think that might be a job that I might like. And superannuation, I've never worked in superannuation. I've contributed all my career, but never worked in the industry. So I thought, that might be a good job to have a crack at.
Yeah, brilliant. Do you think you were a good student moving, out of school into university? Was academics important, or were there other things going on in your life at the time that?
I was a rubbish student, completely rubbish student.
Right.
So I graduated high school, or finished high school back in the early 80s, and I had just scraped through year 12, what was known as HSC back then.
Right.
I had to get through with a supplementary pass, which was, because I had no idea. I liked maths and English. They were the two subjects that sort of resonated for me.
Yeah.
But what I was going to do after I finished high school, I had no idea. I lived in the country. Most of my mates were either joining trades, going off to university, or jumping on the farm with their parents. So, and neither of those three options really appealed to me. So, no, I wasn't a great student, and I had no idea what I was going to do when I finished high school.
High school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what did you end up doing? I mean, I suppose moving from there, you're faced with a number of options, as you've said, and not many of them stuck out to you. Why did going to university and stick out?
Well, the thing that stuck out to me most, so I lived in the country, but my dad lived in the city, so I thought I'll just go and spend a bit of time with my dad and figure out what I want to do, whether I actually want to go back to university. I was a bit overstudying when I finished high school. Wasn't a great student. It was always a bit hard for me. So I thought I'd probably work for a bit, but I didn't know what that meant. And randomly, my dad didn't randomly, but randomly, he encouraged me to take a job with his company when I came to live with him for a bit. His company was a place called Telecom, which became Telstra.
Oh, okay.
So
right.
Just this small little company. And when I joined Telecom, there was 92,000 people working for that company. And so I joined them for a couple of weeks. Dad said, look, there's a couple of weeks work there for you. You can work with me out in the field. He was a technician. And so I worked with him for a couple of weeks. I quite liked the work. I quite liked the getting into the nuts and bolts of a telecommunications network, wires and connections and crawling under houses. And I thought, this is pretty good. But I did harbour some sort of an expectation or a thought that maybe those big office buildings was more a place for me, and I had no idea what that meant. But I just knew that maybe that was more my calling, because I was a bit into maths and English, so I figured, that's probably more my calling, although I do quite enjoy this work that I'm doing. So I eventually, after a couple of weeks, Dad said, do you want to join the company? And I said, yeah, sure. And so that started a 33-year career with Telstra.
Right. Wow.
So I ended up spending all of my building a career in telecommunications.
Right, and that would have been during the period where it moved from a public to a
exactly. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So I had all of that period. So I saw us go from So in actual fact, when I started, I was a public servant. I became a public servant as part of working for Telecom, and I now help provide superannuation services to public servants. I actually contributed to one of our super funds when I started work way back in 1982. Wow. I decided that perhaps being in an office was more of a thing for me, without really knowing what that meant. Got into an office, started doing accounting type work, which at that stage I didn't even know what accounting was.
No degree,
nothing.
No
yeah. So in actual fact, I was in a contact centre, which is important because that sort of environment of customer service became really important over my career. At that stage, I didn't know that, but I was in a contact centre talking to customers, but it was an accounting-based contact centre, looking after collecting money from customers. So that set me on a path, that first job that I had no idea what I wanted to do, but that sort of helped me decide, this thing's actually not bad. I went back to school, to university, shortly after. I had a mentor that sort of took me under his wings early up after I started, and sort of my career was going along okay, and he said, Peter, you should really go back and finish your studies because you're in an accounting area now. We need people that have accounting degrees in these sort of areas. So I went back and studied and got my degree, and that's so that sort of set me on a bit of a path for the rest of my career.
Right, fantastic. So you ended up studying accounting. That's?
Yeah, I went to RMIT in Melbourne, and joined the accounting course there. This is way back when RMIT was not what it looks like today. I still look at all of the growth that's happened in RMIT. It had just become a university.
Buildings
yeah,
and things,
yeah. Well, it was still RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. It wasn't a university back then. It became that, I think, during my degree. And I studied part-time. So I did 6 years of study at RMIT, night school, effectively. I got married during that period, had 3 children as well. So it was a really hectic time for us as a family, but I really loved accounting. I loved I don't know what it was that appealed to me about accounting, but I did love the structure of accounting. Unfortunately, I failed my first accounting subject, and I thought, well, this is disastrous. I've put all this emphasis on this accounting thing, and I've failed. It was a mistake. So they actually, I got a HD for my first accounting subject, and they gave me a fail.
That's awful.
I spent 6 years trying to correct that error. I finally got it corrected in my final results.
Amazing.
But, yeah. So anyway, so it's just funny how things start. But yeah, so that's what I did. I did accounting, and I also had an opportunity. You get to choose your electives during your degree. So I chose management as my electives, and that also set me on a bit of a path because I became very interested in perhaps not management so much, but leadership generally, and what makes a great leader, and how leaders become leaders. Are they grown? Are they born leaders? And all that sort of thing. So accounting and leadership were accounting and management was my degree.
2 areas. Yeah. Do you find that many of the skills you picked up during those years have translated into the rest of your career?
Well, certainly the technical skills that I learnt in my accounting degree have helped me a lot through my business career. Accounting and finance is the language of business, so that set me on a path. I spent then the next 20 years in Telstra in finance, so I became but I also gravitated towards leadership roles where I was leading groups of people. So, and I guess that was a lesson that I learnt, that you can be a leader in any discipline. So I just happened to be in a finance and accounting discipline, but what really engaged me was leading people, leading teams and engaging teams, and figuring out how to enable people to be their best, feel engaged, feel excited and energised by the work that they were doing. And I just happened to do that in finance in Telstra. But I've learned that you can do that in any discipline. If that's what you want to do, then you can shape that thing to whatever it is that interests you. But I did accounting and finance was certainly helped me a lot in my future career because it's the language of business and understanding the dynamics of business. But it was leadership and people, and then getting back to customers that really engaged me and really started to direct my career.
What do you think is, if you had to choose one, the most important skill that you require to be a good leader? Is there is there a skill that crosses all disciplines, or is it very much contextual?
Empathy with people.
Empathy.
Yeah, and an ability to connect with people regardless of who they are, and an appreciation of the value of individuals. I think the greatest leaders I've seen are those who just naturally warm to people and connect with people regardless of who they are, what they do, where they've been, and I guess are genuinely interested in people because everybody's got a story, everybody's got a thing, a series of things going on in their world, and if leaders take the time to understand that, then people will follow. People will want to be part of whatever it is that they're doing. So yeah, probably that.
Empathy. Do you have any, I suppose, tips or tricks on how to develop empathy? Is it through experience, or is it a learned thing?
I think you have to be genuinely interested in people for a start, and I've always been interested in people, but then I've learned a lot over the years. My wife, Jo, is just gorgeous with people, and I've learned a lot about her connection with people from her. But I've also learnt from being a dad, 5 children. You've got to be understanding and empathetic to kids, to your own children. And I guess I've studied leaders and watched what makes a good leader and what makes a not so good leader, and I've learned, I think, that leaders who connect broadly, who engage people, who care about people, tend to be the ones that are most successful.
That's good advice.
Just what I've learned.
So, moving out of university, so you were working at Telstra part-time at that time. Did you know you were going to move back into Telstra for
So I worked full-time Telstra for 33
right.
years. I was there. 6 of those years I studied part-time, did my degree, and then spent the next 10, 12 years in Telstra in finance discipline, applying my degree.
Right.
So I didn't know that was where I was going to end up. It just so happens that the function that I was part of was a finance accounting function. So that's where I ended up and spent the next 20 years, I think, all up about 20 years of my time in finance in Telstra. But I always had a yearning to be more involved in what was actually driving the business. And whilst finance gave me a great opportunity to do a lot of that stuff, like a lot of finance people, I wanted to be a marketer. I wanted to be in sales, but most I wanted to be in customer service. And I only really learnt that later in my career, that was what really engaged me. It was people, leading teams, and customers. And that's what I spent the last 12, 15 years of my career in Telstra doing, was looking after customers in senior leadership roles in Telstra. And so I was given an opportunity to do small commercial roles, and then sales roles, and then some marketing, and then eventually a big customer service role, which involved looking after the contact centres for Telstra. And I did that for 5 years. Best job I've ever had, leading a team of 10,000 people across Australia, the Philippines and India.
Right, wow.
That's a unique opportunity to apply what I just talked about. How do you connect with people when you've got such a large workforce, and have them feel connected to what it is you're trying to do as a leader? So that was a great job, and that sort of saw me through my career with Telstra.
Right. And so what made you, look at CSC as a potential place?
Well, there was another job in between. So so with Telstra, as I say, I was always a bit of a study of leaders, and one particular leader was a former CEO of Telstra's that I was very closely associated with during his tenure. And then he left, and I decided, and I'd thought about this a number of times over the years, whether it was right to be a one company person and whether I should be trying different things. But whenever I think that, there'd be a new opportunity would come up in Telstra and sort of take me in a slightly different direction, give me a new challenge. And so I always felt like I had many different careers in Telstra. But eventually, when this person left, I decided that maybe it was time for me to try something new. I found another opportunity for a couple of year period with General Motors, Holden, in Australia.
Right.
Yeah, so moving from one iconic Australian brand to another iconic Australian brand. And they were going through this period of transition out of local manufacturing, so moving to a full importer of vehicles. So I went there to be their customer person for a couple of years during that period of transition, trying to help customers feel okay about what we were doing when it was so important. Big part of the Holden brand is about locally built, locally manufactured, built by local people. So so that was a fascinating job. I loved it, and I love cars. So
right. How did you build up the necessary confidence to do something like that? Obviously, that's, you've spent a good chunk of your early career working in the same place in similar roles. What did you pick up in order to be able to manage that transition effectively?
That's a good question, Edward. Look, I've always been like the idea of new things, of trying new things, of trying things that perhaps aren't in my complete hitting zone, that's something that I've done before. Holden felt like just a unique opportunity, new industry, but still applying a bit of the stuff that I'd sort of built up, so customer, leadership, connection. And from the day I started, it was a little like starting school for the first time, I got to admit, because 30 odd years with one organisation, you know where everybody works, and I put a very big store on networks and relationships, and I felt proud that I could pick up the phone and talk to somebody in most parts of the organisation and get help on something. But you go into a new organisation, it's a completely new canvas. So that was exciting but daunting. That first day I remember walking in and thinking, I don't know anybody here, not one person. But, over time you start to build up relationships. And I remember walking through the building at one point after I'd been there a month, and I felt, I'm actually feeling pretty good about this. It feels a bit home-like. I feel like I'm part of a family. And Holden was very much like that. It's a relatively smaller company than Telstra, which had been my family for 30-odd years. So yeah, I like the idea of trying different things. So I guess that was what made it a bit easier.
Does it get easy? I mean, obviously you transitioned out of Holden as well. Does it get easier, have you found, in your experience?
It gets easier. I don't mind the trepidation that comes with something completely new, though. And this job came up when we had, Joe and I had spent 3 months in KL working for a completely new company, and I had that same thing. I walked into a new building there, knew one person in the building, and there was a whole building of thousands of people, and spent 3 months there forming connections, developing relationships. And then this opportunity came up. Joe and I literally packed our car with our suitcases and drove from Melbourne to Canberra, moved to Canberra, and then I started work here a day later. And I remember walking around here from our apartment and looking at the building and thinking, okay, I'm going to be working there tomorrow. So I quite like that sort of new, that excitement. And it gives you a little bit of trepidation and nervousness, but I believe that helps you sort of hone yourself to, get yourself up for a big occasion, big thing. So I personally like that sort of sensation of trying something new.
Do you think that people who you work with currently here are similar to you in many ways, or quite different?
I think people the world over, you have folks that love change, love different things, people that prefer things that are similar. Joe and I are very, very different, but similar in so many ways. But one of the things that is completely consistent all the time is that I want to go to a new restaurant, even if we've just had a great experience at a restaurant. I'll say, we should go to somewhere else next time. And Joe will want to go back to the place that we've been. So we've just found a place that we love. Why don't we just go back there? I say, yeah, well, let's go to a new place. And that has been consistent over the entire time. So I think the world over, people are different, and here is no different. You've got some amazing people that are so committed and passionate about what they do, which I found at Holden as well. People just so genuinely committed to the thing that they were doing. And Telstra as well. And that's what I love about organisations too. And then I always find that the challenge for me is to build on that. One of the things I've observed in leaders over my career is the best leaders respect what they've arrived at, where they find whatever it is that they've landed in, respect what's been built, and help create energy around change and positive change. And that's largely what I've determined is what I like doing, what I'm okay at doing, is creating positive change, engaging and people to make things a little bit different.
How does one go about finding a place where you are working and you enjoy what you're doing? Is it a matter of getting out there and trying as many firms as you possibly can? Is it about making the experience wherever you are as enjoyable as you can make it? Is there a particular way you would recommend going about finding that place or that role that suits you?
That's another good question. I personally think I could be engaged in many different things. So there's nothing that I've come across yet that I haven't been engaged in. So, but that's me. I'm that personality type that just enjoys where they are and finds things in whatever it is they're doing, because it comes back to that people piece as well. And it's the people that are important in any workplace. And if you're a person that wants to connect with people, then you'll find something that's engaging out of any workplace. But I do think it's important to find something that is important to you as well. So understanding what it is that engages you, knowing yourself, being very self-aware about when you're at your best. And so I know that when I'm at my best is doing stuff that involves leading teams and being in contact with customers and helping lead change in a positive way. I know that about myself. I've learned it over my career. So I try and find things which are going to help me do that. And then the topic, the subject matter is a little less important. And I like learning about something new. So I loved learning about telecommunications. I spent 30 years and how much did telecommunications change in my time? The internet was introduced. I remember receiving my first email. Just enormous change in that industry. Vehicles as well. We were going through the first semi-automated vehicles and electric vehicles, as well as the core V8 stuff, which I loved. So, and then I get here, and here's a superannuation industry which is in a complete state of flux, which is just fascinating what we're doing, what this industry is going through change-wise. A big retirement system review underway by the government. So the topic is less important, but it's got to engage you.
Well, we are coming towards the end of the interview. It's been really good to talk to you. I think we might leave it at a question that is relevant to all of us as university graduates, and that would be, in a couple of minutes, what would be the key piece of advice you would give someone, whether they're early in their degree or moving out of their degree into the workforce? What is that one piece of advice that you would give?
I think the thing I've learned the most is being aware enough about yourself. What is the thing that gets you engaged, excited, and when are you at your best? What are you going to be at your best doing? And then try and find things that are about that thing. And then the other thing I've learned, which probably takes a bit of time, but develop a point of view about something. Doesn't matter what it is. So I developed a point of view about customers, and that's become my thing, that I want to be the customer guy. That sounds a bit trite, but that's what I want to be. I want to be the person who always puts myself in the shoes of our customers, regardless of whatever we do, whatever job I do. So having a perspective, being self-aware about when you're at your best, put those things together and you'll be successful.
Fantastic. Good advice. Thank you very much for talking to us today, Peter.
Good
and for everyone listening or watching, be sure to look up CSC. I'm sure there are plenty of graduate opportunities for people coming out of ANU.
We'd love some more graduates here. Please come and join us. We'd love we'd love to provide opportunities for grads and interns. So, and we've got a big grad program and an intern program. So I'd encourage anyone coming out of uni to look us up.
Fantastic. Well, we will link that all in the show notes. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, and thank you very much for listening to us today.